Morning guys. Well, up early again, 5 o'clock today, so I thought I'd do the follow-up to this video that I did last week about the psychedelic carousel with its bizarre animals and these strange circus wagons. Now it's horrible outside today, it's cold, miserable, wet, so I hope you're all well and you're all keeping together, keeping your heads together. Yeah, lots of love to everybody. I had some interesting comments. Jaylene, she says this looks like Roman goddess worship and also quite reminiscent of what we see the American government present with our current presidential charade. This one has a round seal on, but it's quite similar to the American presidential seal, and also depicted as an eagle-like symbol, which is symbolic of American government and Romanism. So she points to this Columbia bandwagon, which is this one here, which she says has a round seal with a face like a ruler of a god, which could be Nimrod. So this is the Columbia wagon. This is 21 feet long, right? Remember that, 21 foot long. Although it does look like it was messed about with later on. They did mess about with them, painted them. So here's the eagle she's talking about. Jaylene's mentioned. And another interesting comment that I had here from Colourblind, I think she says it on here about keeping it simple. I think simplicity, it always helps me, because Colourblind has looked at similar things to this, and so I kept it simple. And if the apple never falls far from the tree, so I knew that these things were connected to what they're being used for now. And one of the things that really sort of struck me, hang on, I'm going to have to put my circus video up. What I thought about while I was looking at this. Now, first of all, let's have a look at this one. So this has been Americanized, so they've put stars and stripes, flag colours here. They've put what looks like Wild Bill Hickok up here. But when you look down here, this looks more like a Spanish conquistador scene, doesn't it? Something like that. These are, and there's a Native American there, and a boat coming into the harbour here. So this looks more like some sort of nothing to do with Wild Bill Hickok, but who would have looked? And look at this thing here. I think this may well be the Columbia bandwagon, I'm not sure, with the eagle here. This here, they turn into the American flag, but it's a sheaf of wheat, got angels, lions, quirlicles, all that sort of thing. This humongous thing here, this English Union Jack would have been put in afterwards. Again, and the huge height of them. I actually think there's a couple of things going on here. I think this is probably one that they botched together. Now this is saying these are all rotted and afterwards, but I think maybe these are how they find them. I think this is more how they may find them, although they're saying that this is like some sort of circus wagon graveyard. Let's keep going. I put a few on here. This one again. I wanted to look at the backs of them. Can you see all this sort of like chain stuff? And if you look here, you can see that this seems to be split away from the top. Yeah? So what came to mind for me was this. Dr. Parnassius's travelling theatre. Now you've got to remember that this is a film, so this is not a true representation of a travelling theatre. This is fantasy, yeah. However, these travelling theatres were everywhere. So let's have a little look and see what it says about travelling theatres, shall we? Medieval drama and mystery plays. So during the Middle Ages, mystery plays, miracle plays and morality plays were all the rage. But they weren't shown in theatres, they were shown by travelling playmen who used to go around in travelling theatres. A detail which sets these plays apart from modern drama is their mobility. The plays were usually performed on separate pageant wagons with wheels, so that they could be moved. The wagons will proceed one after another, and the players will perform on them at various fixed stations around the town or city. The audience could pay a bit more to have a seat at these various stations, or they could stand. So they don't know what they looked like. They don't know what they looked like. They were performed in places like Clerkenwell, which is interesting because one of the sets for Dr. Parnassius, one of the scenes that he did was set at Clerkenwell, which is an area of London. So if I go back to here, let's have a look. It should be coming up next. That's Dr. Parnassius's. Right, these are old illustrations of travelling theatres, yeah. They'd put them up in the street, open the doors, open them up, yeah, take the sides down, open them up. Sometimes they put a stage on, sometimes they had a few of these things. They'd have a few together so that they could have a stage down one side, a stage down the other side. Here's another one. This is sort of quite a basic one. Here's some of these carriages, and I think this may have been before they put the smaller wheels on. Look at this one. These, don't know yet. Jury's still out on these tiered ones. Yeah, not entirely sure what they are. Right, this is an illustration from somebody who's trying to work out how these things actually worked. So this bit here, she says, this is her illustration, this bit here would have been quite cramped. It wasn't the biggest of stages because this was like the body of the vehicle. So they perform on the top here. This is heaven, this is earth, and this will be hell. So they cover this bottom bit, and quite often they had some sort of like model hell creature that would sort of show that it was hell, and under here the players will get changed, come and perform on here and on the top. Which is like one of those bandstand things. This is a idea somebody's had and they've made their own one. They made their own here. So, yeah. And this is a bunch of minstrels in one of these, which I think was quite possibly, let's have a look. One of these. Yeah. So I think what's going on here is a number of things. These are all things that they found in the past, and repurposed. So if you look at these bandwagons now and think about that girl's illustration, on the top you'd have the players. These are 21 foot long, remember, these are big, these aren't 12 foot, and they're actually saying with the theatrical stages that they were between 12 and 20 feet long, sometimes smaller. So you can see these here, and I think these opened up, which is why I showed this one. So I think this is separate from this, do you see? And this opened up or pulled down. That would pull down because there's all these sort of little chain mechanisms at the end. And I've been trying to find, these would have been on higher wheels, so there was more space underneath. The wheels would have been much, much higher, as in that other photograph that I showed you. And they just came apart and they would perform in them. They're travelling theatres. I'm pretty sure that a lot of these are old travelling theatres. I've got some more information about them as well. It's all mixed up, of course. Here's Dr. Parnassius, which is way higher, obviously, than the ones that we see, and this is what Dr. Parnassius look like. These are other versions that they did, but of course this is fantasy. This is fantasy. They said that they looked at the Pantechinons from Victorian Circus and Fairgrounds. The Pantechinons are these huge wagons, a bit like furniture wagons today. So I also think that some of these things, the smaller ones, were used to carry props. Yeah? Morality plays. This one here, I actually found one that looks quite a lot like this one. Very plain. Disappeared off the face of the earth now. Pictures of India on it. So miracle plays and travelling theatres were all over Europe, everywhere. They'd go from town to town, they put on plays, they could be quite bawdy, they were allegorical. So a lot of them were supposed to be Christian based because it was supposed to be like morality plays, but they were also always very, very bawdy. The audience would join in, and everybody would have a jolly good time. This is this one. Hang on, there's a picture here I want to show you because I do have other sort of theories as well. Some of them are so incredibly strange. Look, it's got a jester here, the Harlequin. And apparently a lot of these places looked to Venice, the Venetian carnivals, because the Venetian carnivals were the most splendid, and these things were going on 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th century. So I'm guessing that some of this stuff is getting on a bit. Right, this is the one I wanted to show you. Look. I also have a theory that these may well have been train carriages for the old railways, which I think were probably highly decorative, and they would, a lot of them were just used on railways, the old railways, as carriages. Travelling theatres, railway carriages, theatres for containers for carrying stuff. They'd perform on the top, open it up, and you can see it's not very big in the middle, as this girl says. They're just not very big in the middle for people to perform on. Some are probably higher than others. Now these things here, I think some of these were for giants. I don't think for one second that these things were for normal-sized human beings, and there's other stuff as well that I can show you to go with that. Alright, here's one. I'll show you that other one in a minute. I'm coming to it. See? And these mirrors would have been, I don't know if there were mirrors in there originally, but you can see the size of it here. This would have been higher wheels. This would have opened up. They would have performed on the top. This would have been the middle stage, and that would have been another one. Any other of these things would have been down around the side, at the front. Right, this one. It's another one. Look at the decoration. I think these are pretty old. Pretty old. This, I strongly suspect that some of these were used in world fairs. Here there's those ones that are supposedly rotting in a yard, and they may be, because the wheels do seem to be circus wheels. This is one that's falling to pieces. It's difficult to get to see what is going on, you know? Another one again. This. I don't think that was for normal sized people. Look at the size of it. Look at it, it's ridiculous. Complete, it's like some sort of empire coach. It's got London, headquarters London written on it. But the age of this thing? I mean, these guys look as if they have absolutely sweet F all to do with the construction of this. This looks like Clive of India and Queen Victoria. But whether they were put in later, I don't know. This is all empire with allegorical scenes. This is insane. Circus coach, yeah? But I think this was for a lot bigger people. A lot bigger people than this. They have to have a ladder to get in it. I'm sure that would have looked good. So yeah. Travelling theatres maybe. Or maybe even ornate coaches, although these do have wheels on. But they may well have been at one time. They did have trains that wagons travelled on as well, train tracks that wagons travelled on. So who knows there? But yeah, they used to travel all around Europe, which sort of brings me to, if it's here, I don't think I saved it. Oh yeah, I did actually. I saved it here. So I'm going to be looking at this next. I'm going to be looking at gypsies next. The gypsy groups that came over in 16th century Britain. They were known as Egyptians. They were tinkers, travelling theatres, and they all fled from their homelands into Europe, into the UK, into Italy and Spain. There were healers, hawkers, tinkers, and they travelled well-trodden national and international routes to sites of religious importance. So they were an exotic novelty, and also part of a much larger population of travelling people in Western Europe at this time. So everybody was on the move in the 15th and 16th century, which is pretty much what we consider, well, APM research considers to be the time of the last 400-year reset, which is where we're heading now, I think. Yeah. But that's for later, so okay, that's them covered. I might go back to them. It's a bit early. Now I want to talk about my my little animals. So I found this album of tournaments and parades in Nuremberg. This 112 sheet manuscript includes depictions of contestants equipped for tournaments, a parade preceding a late form of tournament called a carousel. Participants in tournaments known as Gellenstrechen or bachelors' jousts, held in Nuremberg between 1446 and 1561, and depictions of pageant sleighs, some of which were used in a parade held in the winter of 1640 to 41. The illustrations are probably the work of a brief mailer or letter painter, who would have also written and embellished official documents and painted coats of arms. So they used to dress up and prance around and go around in circles called carousels. This is a mainstream. Carousels emerged from early jousting traditions in Europe and the Middle East. And there they are. It is not by accident that carousels usually depict horse riding. And when you look at carousel animals, they do quite often have the colours and these sorts of things on. Yeah, heraldic. It all emerged from the early jousting tradition in Europe as well as the Middle East. Jousting grew popular in Europe at the time of the Crusades. Carosello was a much used word among European knights. So here they are. And this is where it ended up. Apparently they made they made rides for children first. Here you can see the remnants of the heraldry. Here you can see the heraldic costume on this beautiful carousel horse. Oh, I love them. So let's show you these. These are beautiful. So here are the knights with their heraldry, and they all had these bizarre things on their heads. So what I think pretty much happened, it's a case of somebody being in the right place at the right time, salvage, reclamation, and managed to get hold of a lot of this stuff from back then. Armour. This house on the rock is full of armour as well. Full of armour, full of firearms, full of these carousel creatures, and just full of everything. So quite a lot of these jousting guys, yeah, they're all very splendid, and apparently they this is at the 1446 1561. They all have these vests. Look at this strange mask armour. Odd, aren't they? Anyway, I'll zip ahead because I want to get to these. Show you these as well. This is great. I'll leave a link to all of this. These are the minstrels and all the other types of people that were at this thing. They had like equestrian tricks. There's just so much to look at. And then you get these. So many of these horses. I'm sure if you're into this sort of thing, you really enjoy looking at these. Look at these. There's a couple of women on that carousel who've got these hats on, and there's also, I found, I'll try and find the picture, a carousel horse that I think has got original horse stuff on. It's a lion. It just seems to have been dumped on this thing. They probably picked up all sorts of stuff and just made this sort of phantasmagoria. Right, this is what I'm looking for. These are pageant sledges. These are pageant sledges. So they drive these sledges out with decked horses and drive them round and round and round in a circle, a carousel. Look how ornate they are. But look at the difference in size between this person, and it is a person, and this person. That's an old woman. A cow. see the half person, half horse thing going on? This is a person, it's a huge person. This is death. So yeah, I think some of these were used as carousel animals. I think these pageant sledges were very common in Europe. They, because there's a lot of snow, they wanted to have their parades, processions, pageants, floats. Somebody mentioned Bridgewater Carnival, which still goes on in England. I mean, our floats these days are pretty tacky, but they would have been splendid. They would have been completely splendid things. Men in a tub, swan, see them on carousels. It's pretty basic sledge, reindeers. Yeah, so pageant sledges, jousting horses, and reclaimed antiquities. Right, here's the carousel. So they go on their sledge and they go round and round and round in the carousel, but look at the discrepancy between the size of these people and these people. The ringmaster and the sledge driver. I don't think they're employing children to be a ringmaster. I think this genuinely is 400 years ago. We lived with big people. There were big people and little people. I also think that some of the stuff on the House of the Rock was used in the plays, automata, pretty much automata type things, where they had like boats in waves and things flying out. There was it's quite funny actually, because I commented, I replied to a comment saying this stuff reminds me of something. What it reminded me of was a video that I did 2 years ago about automata. So I'm going to go back to that, because I think that quite possibly some of the stuff that we see at the House of the Rock was automata, because the guy who built the place was an electrician. Right, this girl here, she's got a blog, and here's one of these things, and look at this. That's absolutely beautiful, isn't it? This is Russian girl. There's another one out on the ice. So sledges were a common form of transport, and sometimes they'd made them extremely ornate and had pageants with them. And I think that this stuff was just found and just taken and cheapened. One of the things that the controllers love to do is cheapen everything, turn beautiful stuff into a lesser version of itself. Yeah, crazy carnivals and pageants. Look at that. That was obviously for some princess to go out in, yeah. But yeah, these things are about in museums. Here's one. Marie Antoinette's. So yeah, pageant sledges, processional coaches, travelling circuses, it's all tied up to the same thing. They are pretty much what they are, but older than they are, obviously, a lot older than they are. I think they're 200-300 years old, some of this stuff. So, Barnum and Bailey Circus. Hachaliah Bailey appears to have established one of the earliest circuses in the United States after he purchased an African elephant whom he named Old Bet around 1806. Now, where Old Bet came from, this African elephant in New York is anybody's guess, but presumably this was when they were bringing all sorts of stuff over from Europe, and it was being bought up and just repurposed. It was basically travelling theatre stuff, and out of it grew the circus that we know today. Just 13 years after John Bill Ricketts first brought circus to America from Great Britain. So according to the mainstream, I just, you know, you have to, I always take things with a pinch of salt. Wiki's good for getting basic MSM info, and then you sort of have to snoop around the edges a bit. So John Bill Ricketts, now this guy started off this hippodrome thing in London. He had an equestrian show going on, and I've seen pictures of it. It's just like a circus ring in the middle of the theatre, which he did an equestrian show on. He began his theatrical career, this is this guy, with the Royal Circus and Equestrian Philharmonic Academy in London. So the word circus basically just means circle. It means a circle. So it was a circle with horses, the Royal Circus, the Royal Circle. And then he moved over to America in 1792, and he built Ricketts Art Pantheon and Amphitheatre, a circus building, so a building with a circle. And he had a riding school. He trained some horses up, and he gave an equestrian performance, 2 or 3 exhibitions a week. And in 1797 he commemorated the retirement of his friend and fellow Freemason George Washington with a special performance. So all tied in together. This is him with his horse Complanter performing, Mr. Ricketts. Here he is, friend of George Washington, Freemason. So we got Freemasonry in at the start of this. Then 3 days after the death of Washington, his building burned down. They always burn down. He sailed off to the West Indies. He got some of his horses, all sorts of stuff, blah 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 blah. But yeah, he's credited with starting this circular performance of animals. And then we have Barnum and Bailey. Who take over from this. Barnum, who as a boy had worked as a ticket seller for Hachaliah Bailey's show, had run the Barnum's American Museum. So, and we got this American Museum. So this American Museum was located at the corner of Broadway, Park Row and Ann Street in Manhattan from 1841 to 1865. It was owned by P.T. Barnum, who purchased Scudder's American Museum in 1841. The museum offered both strange and educational attractions and performances. So this place was already in 1841 collecting memorabilia and weird stuff. This is a weird picture, I'll show you in a minute. So in 1841 he acquired the building and natural history collection of Scudder's American Museum for less than half of its appraised value, with the financial support of Francis Olmsted, by quickly purchasing it the day after the soon-to-be buyers, the Peel Museum Company, failed to make their payment. He converted the 5-storey exterior into an advertisement lit with limelight. The museum opened on January the 1st, 1842. Its attractions made it a combination zoo, museum, lecture hall, wax museum, theatre and freak show. So this from here, it took to the road. It burned down about 3 times with animals leaping out the windows, all sorts of stuff going on. And then he decided to take to the road. I think it's probably around the time he got hold of some of this stuff. And then he was able to take his show to the road. Bandwagons, bands on the top. This is the Angels Bandwagon. This is just beautiful. I've shown you that a few times. It's just insanely beautiful. And huge, they're huge. So I think these were probably trundling around European streets, being opened up. Some of them had props in. Some of them had maybe automata in. Some of them had, you know, sets and clothes and people in. and then they perform on the top, in the middle, cover the bottom. These wheels were a lot higher, so you would have 4 or 5 foot underneath. They came quite high up off the road, but they were narrow because they had to go down little streets. That's why they're so narrow. I can just imagine it. Morality plays, miracle plays, and the rest. Meanwhile, American Gods, the Carousel, Animals. I don't think they all were. I think some of them were probably. I mean, look. Just right. I'm going to go to my because I did save some other things. You have to bear with me while I go through. This is a dedicated circus folder. We're not going on too much. That's that one. Yeah. These things, I think this is Venetian. They used to have these in the streets. This has got a long pointy beak here. And they've stuck a model in. And I think they just stuck it on the front of a carnival horse. House on the Rock. Here's the elephant, which was quite difficult to see before. I don't think they're all from these pageant things. There's a theatre. There's that one. This is an elephant that was a carving from the front of one of these wagons, and they're saying it's being carved here. But I don't think it is being carved here. I think it's just been repaired. I think it's been taken down to have its trunk repaired, because its trunk in the original goes off. That there, dunno. You can see that it's complete. It's not been carved here. It's Child's Bike here, I think. It's sweet. Look at this. That could have been something like that. You don't know the size of these sledges, do we? See here, you can see some of the back on here. How they'd go in. I've been trying to see if this comes apart, you know. Here's some more of them. These are the old ones. These are really old travelling theatres. They just established them here in the street. You've got ladies on the top here. This is sort of like the Richies, what the Richies would be doing, so looking at. Gold. Here's that one I was on about. In the middle, on the top and below. It's that one that looks like one that could be pageant wagon. This is out of the House on the Rock. These are the House on the Rock. These could have just been, this could be flat, and it's just been made to look as if it's doing that by putting that there and having it on an angle. See what I mean? Reindeer pulling a sledge. Here's one. Look, see the giants playing with the jousters. Whether these are toys or not, I don't know. And here's the minstrels, and they look like big minstrels, don't they? In one of these, which looks to me like one of those pageant wagons. Lion's head, the usual stuff. Of course, these circus wagons haven't got these posh wheel covers or anything. More of the same. I think these things may have been used as props in shows, the Baron Munchausen type thing, where they sort of appear, come onto the stage with somebody in, and then are taken off. Wonderful thing, wonderful. That to me, that is a travelling theatre. I would say that was definitely one. On higher wheels, you can see here that this isn't joined to the bottom bit. It's probably pulled down or these bits came out. Or it may have been the other side. It could be the other side completely that comes apart. Here's wonderful, wonderful sledge. Here's another one of them. That's a fact, what they think they might have looked like. Saying they don't know what they look like. Here's like one that's off we're going. Obviously this is a modern illustration. These plays are often performed on pageant wagons or platform stages specially designed for drama. These could be positioned in inns, yards to allow better viewing. High off the ground. Look at that. These things I think probably were sledges, but I'm not entirely sure about the age of these. They're saying that these are modern, but I don't know. I'm going to look a little bit more into these. I haven't really spent a lot of time on these. I've done a little bit of work, but it sort of got involved in looking into the. This is a Father Christmas story. This is a York play. This is their idea of what the stage would have looked like. So you can see here they put steps going up to the stage. Yeah, on those circus wagons it would end about here, so could be done. This is the one that I think, this line I think has got some original jousting clothes on, because it's not meant for this lion, but it's beautiful. So I think this may well be some original jousting stuff. So the theatre again. This is the dolls carousel in the house on the rock. So they got teeny tiny ones of these weird things. Look at this guy. Not sure about these three-tiered things. I think they may have played music. I think it may have been a musical type thing. You can imagine this thing coming into town. Can you imagine something coming into town? You know? There's another one. Imagine these sort of circuses trundling into town. This I think had an organ in it. I think this had an organ in it and they've taken it out. This is old, and I did actually really find a museum that has things that look like this with the organs still intact, but I can't find the link. I didn't save it, typically. So that's my research. I'm sorry it's all a bit bitty, but excuse me, it's early in the morning. It's still a bit early. But travelling theatres, processional coaches for people that seem to be somewhat larger than us, and pretty much used for what they're used for again, but slightly different. You know, they're not given the same importance. These things, I think some of them are old, very old. Cornelia and her jewels. The most attractive tableau wagon ever to appear. And what did they do to it? What happened to that? So this has obviously been cut, sliced up. In 1946, Frank Mayers of Peoria, Illinois, got the carvings that had come off the long before dismantled wagon and were now strewn about the woods lot in Venice. Why would you do that? Ripped it apart and just stuck it on a little wagon. You got the Harlequin here. This is Venetian. The Harlequin was very Venetian, so I suspect this is probably Venetian, Phoenician, processional stuff. Such a shame. And yet again, they can't tell us the truth. They just have to say these are circus wagons. These were all built by blah 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 and blah 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 and blah, 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 blah. And it's all a load of complete and utter tosh. And I know it's not important. This isn't important in the scheme of things. That these aren't, you know, what they're pretending they are. But it's just more, isn't it? More lies and do. And people like Terry Jones and they find out about this stuff and make films about it and make themselves hugely rich on our history, which they've had privy to and we haven't. Anyway, thanks for watching. It's no great shakes, but I find it interesting.